So I hope that what's come across so far is that I certainly think this is an extraordinarily stimulating and exciting environment. I think there's a huge amount for you to take advantage of. But I don't want you to think that I'm a utopian fool and unaware that the interactive landscape hasn't come along with some considerable downsides. And I want to pick out a couple which I think are important for you to consider. One of them is simply about backing the wrong horse, as it were, in terms of any technology. I said at the head that I was going to mention one or two brands because at the moment they are very dominant. But I did also say that I've been around long enough to see some very dominant players come and go. One of the reasons I've been very keen to avoid talking about anything perhaps too bleeding edge, as they say, is that, frankly, most apps and services that are launched, in the end, are actually not very successful at all. That's fine. That's the nature of the environment. People are trying things all the time. They build them, they iterate. If they fail, they move on. Well, that's great if you're building a business in technology, but it can be problematic if you've built an entire service around someone's offering. So I think it's really important to be ecumenical in your use of technology, to be as broad as possible, and not to get hung up on any one particular service and bake it too strongly into your work. So that's one of the dangers I wanted to raise with regard to your teaching practice. Now, of course, the other is really about the very harsh environment that sometimes the internet can be for young people. Now, you'll all be aware better than me that there are issues around child protection and so on that you're very mindful of. But I want to talk more specifically about the domain of what I called earlier self-publishing, and point out that for those young people that are choosing to put their music out online, they can get a really hard time. Now, YouTube in particular is famous for what I can only call really the feral nature of its commentary. I mean, really the comments are a bit Lord of the Flies. Now, sometimes that can be, I think, very beneficial. There are undoubtedly young people who can respond to powerful and often very nasty criticism by just coming back at you bigger and better, and in the case of the heavy metal shred guitar players that I follow online, coming back bigger, better, and much faster and louder. But you know, I accept that not all kids are cut from that particular cloth, and I think that it's important for you as teachers to be aware that amongst your pupils who will be looking at publishing their material online, then you need to think about the ones that are perhaps more sensitive to that criticism and won't respond to it as positively, and think about perhaps ways in which they can still publish online but do so more safely. And the things I would suggest there are simply, well, if they are insistent on using YouTube, then perhaps turn comments off. Again, if they're using YouTube, it's not necessary to put video content on there, simply put audio up. And as I said earlier, it might be that they consider posting in SoundCloud. Not that SoundCloud doesn't allow comments, it does, and that can be a harsh environment too, but I think generally it's perceived to be a more benign environment than YouTube. But I think overall what I'd say is just, work with young people to help them understand that, being out there, frankly, being out there as a musician is always to be being exposed. That comes with the territory, but be aware that some areas you're going to go into are nastier than others, and if you're not ready for that, then perhaps think about going somewhere else.